You always remember the moment your life splits in two. For me, it was a Wednesday night. Chicken piccata, lightly burnt around the edges. Her wine glass was full, mine barely touched. The kids were asleep upstairs, the kitchen softly humming from the dishwasher, the ceiling fan ticking overhead like a clock winding down. Rachel was scrolling through her phone absently, like she always did during dinner these days. Then she looked up and said, so casually it felt surreal, I think we should consider an open marriage. Just like that. As if she were asking if we should repaint the guest bathroom. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. I stared at her, trying to process the words, thinking maybe I misheard. What? Her lips curved into a slight smirk. Relax, she said, brushing her long auburn hair back behind one ear. It's not that big of a deal. Everyone's doing it these days. Everyone's doing it. That phrase landed like a punch in the gut. I put the fork down. You're serious? Rachel chuckled, sipping her wine like this was some harmless dinner banter. Come on, you've seen the articles. Open marriages are healthy, honest, modern. Modern. God? The way she said it, like not wanting to watch your wife get railed by someone else was some backward puritanical sin. I studied her face. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't trying to break it to me gently. No, she looked relieved. As if she'd been rehearsing this line all day. That's when I knew. She already had someone in mind. I tried to keep my face blank. Years of work presentations, managing egos in boardrooms, negotiating contracts. I could fake calm. I forced a smile that felt like glass in my throat. If that's what you want, I said. Rachel's smile widened, a flash of teeth. I knew you'd be cool about it. Cool. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling while Rachel showered. I could hear the water hitting tile, the soft echo of her humming. She never used to sing in the shower. Not for years. But now, she was humming again. A light, playful tune. She was already somewhere else. I turned my head to look at the empty side of the bed. Her perfume lingered on the pillow, expensive and floral. For the first time in years, I wondered if I'd wasted my life on a woman who never really saw me. I thought of the early days, when Rachel and I used to sneak kisses in the break room of the marketing firm where we met. She'd laugh at my terrible puns. I'd bring her her favorite coffee order without asking. We used to be real. Now, her kisses were absent-minded pecks, like tipping a valet. Her laughter never quite reached her eyes. And that glow she had lately, it wasn't from me. That glow was from someone else. And I'd agreed to it. Because what else could I do? Say no, and become the jealous husband? The possessive loser? The guy who couldn't keep up with the times? Fuck that. She wanted a taste of freedom? Fine. But she forgot one thing. I wasn't the man she married anymore either. The next morning, I found myself watching her more closely. Rachel moved through the kitchen like a woman with secrets. Phone clutched close, eyes checking notifications every few minutes. She was wearing lingerie under her robe. Not the comfy kind. The kind with lace and garters. She thought I didn't notice. But I did. I noticed everything now. She kissed my cheek before leaving for yoga and smelled like new perfume. Expensive. Unfamiliar. I watched her walk out the door with a bounce in her step and a lightness that made my stomach twist. In the silence that followed, I stood in the doorway for a long time, still tasting the sourness of her announcement. An open marriage. I should have laughed in her face. Instead, I said sure, like a damn coward. At work, I couldn't concentrate. Every report looked like static. I kept opening emails and forgetting what they said halfway through. I ran a call with a client and zoned out halfway through his pitch, nodding in the right places while my mind wandered to the worst places imaginable. Was she with him right now? Some guy with perfect abs and a smug smile? Was he making her laugh like I used to? Was she moaning? The thought punched the air from my lungs. She wasn't even trying to hide it. That was the worst part. A week ago, I saw her texting during dinner. She smiled at the screen and tucked it under her thigh when I glanced over. When I asked who it was, she said, Cynthia from Pilates. She's never gone to Pilates in her life. I remember how she rolled over in bed last Friday, her back to me, whispering into her phone. I wasn't supposed to hear, but I did. Next Friday. Same room. Same time. And she laughed. She never laughs like that with me anymore. I didn't eat dinner that night. I sat at the kitchen table long after the sun went down, staring at the empty wine glass she'd left in the sink. She wasn't home. Not yet. I checked the clock. 10:47 p.m. My stomach clenched as headlights swept across the wall. She walked in, cheeks flushed, hair messy. Traffic was a nightmare, she said with a yawn. I didn't respond, just stared. She met my eyes for half a second, then looked away. You okay? She asked. I nodded slowly. Yeah. She kissed my forehead and headed upstairs. She didn't notice the subtle change in me. She didn't notice the silence stretching into something dangerous. But I noticed everything. And I had a plan now. I went to the garage and sat in the dark, letting the cold concrete cool the heat burning behind my ribs. My phone buzzed. It was a notification from the shared calendar we'd stopped using years ago. Rachel's event. Dinner with C. C. Not Cynthia. Not even trying anymore. She wanted freedom? I'd give her something better. I'd give her clarity. Because if this marriage was going to become a battlefield, I wasn't going to be the first casualty. No, I was going to own the battlefield. And maybe, just maybe, I'd finally remember who the hell I used to be before Rachel turned me into this hollow, smiling husband with nothing but a wedding ring and a broken spine. I walked into the office Thursday morning pretending like nothing had changed. The badge reader blinked green. I gave the front desk guy my usual nod. The elevator dinged on the 10th floor, and for a second, I caught my reflection in the polished chrome. I looked the same, but I wasn't. Inside, something had shifted. A quiet, subtle click, like a door unlocking that had been sealed for years, maybe even decades. I'd always been the steady guy at work, the guy people counted on to have his shit together. My reports were detailed, my numbers flawless. I wasn't flashy. I didn't need to be. I was consistent, predictable, safe. Today, though, I didn't feel safe. I felt like a live wire, fraying at the edges. The first crack showed up during the 9 a.m. team check-in. I'd reviewed the analytics deck the night before, like I always did. Only I hadn't. I'd opened it, stared at it for 10 minutes, then closed it and poured myself a second whiskey. So when Sandra asked me why the Q3 data summary was missing a key metric, I blinked. Shit, I muttered under my breath, flipping through the slides with a frown. Is there a revised version coming? She asked, tight-lipped but polite. I could feel the room's eyes turning toward me, half on Zoom, half in person. Silent, expectant. I'll get that corrected today, I replied. My voice sounded normal, calm. But inside, my stomach churned with a weird mix of embarrassment and apathy. After the meeting, I stayed at my desk, pretending to fix the slide. But the truth was, I couldn't focus. I kept seeing Rachel's face, tilted upward, laughing at some other man's joke. I imagined his hand grazing her thigh under a table, her breath catching as he leaned in. The jealousy wasn't the worst part. No, the worst part was how much she didn't seem to care if I found out. And now here I was, surrounded by fluorescent lights, open floor plans, and coworker chatter, while my marriage lay bleeding in the back of my mind like a hit-and-run victim. By noon, I had 2 coffees in my system and barely any work done. That's when Claire showed up. She didn't say anything right away, just hovered near my cubicle wall, arms crossed, eyes scanning me like she was trying to figure out which part was broken. Claire wasn't flashy either, but she didn't need to be. She had this presence. Auburn hair pulled into a low ponytail, dark glasses always perched on her head, minimal makeup. She was sharp, observant, the kind of person who noticed when someone was off their game. Hey, she said softly. I looked up, forced a smile. Hey, you okay, really? That really hit harder than I expected. Most people stop at the first okay. Claire didn't. Yeah, just a weird morning. She nodded slowly. You've been off all week. I opened my mouth to lie, to brush it off, say something stupid about allergies or not sleeping well. But the words caught in my throat. Claire waited. Not pushing, not prying. Just there. I finally exhaled, rubbing the back of my neck. Personal stuff. Home. Her eyes softened. Wife stuff. I chuckled, but it came out bitter. Something like that. She didn't press, just gave me a knowing look. If you ever need to talk or scream into a void, I've got void access. I smiled despite myself. Thanks. She started to walk away, then paused. Hey, she added, turning back. Don't let whatever it is make you forget who you are here. You're one of the few who still gives a damn about doing things right. And then she walked off, just like that, leaving a trail of grace in her wake. By 3 o'clock, I still hadn't opened the revised analytics deck. My email pinged. A forwarded thread. Rachel. It was a confirmation for a wine tasting. 2 guests. Friday night. No name. No details. Just the address. 7:30 p.m. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I marked it unread and shut my laptop. I went to the break room and splashed cold water on my face. "You look like someone died," said a voice behind me. I turned. It was Kevin from sales, smirking like always. The kind of guy who wore loafers with no socks and called interns chief. "Thanks, Kev. That's just the pick-me-up I needed." He grinned. "Hey, man, we've all been there. Wife giving you hell?" I said nothing. He clapped my shoulder. "Just say the word. We'll take you out tomorrow night. You need a distraction, trust me." I didn't trust him, not even a little. But the word distraction lodged in my head like a seed. I stepped out of the building at 5, the autumn air cool and biting against my skin. Claire was by the curb, waiting for her rideshare. She glanced over at me and smiled faintly. "You heading out?" I nodded. "Yeah, trying to clear my head." "You should go somewhere loud," she said, pulling her jacket tighter. "Somewhere no one expects you to be." I looked at her, eyes narrowing slightly. "You always this good at advice?" Claire shrugged. "No, just familiar with the feeling." I wanted to ask her more. I wanted to ask why she looked at me like she knew. But her ride pulled up, and she slipped into the back seat before I could say another word. On the drive home, the sun dipped behind a row of trees, casting long, jagged shadows across the freeway. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Rachel. "Going to be out late Friday. Don't wait up." There was no "love you" at the end. No emoji. Not even a period. Just cold, mechanical distance. She didn't even care that I knew. She was gone. And I was here, barely holding my life together with spreadsheets and coffee. But something was starting to build in my chest. Not rage. Not sorrow. Something new. Something dangerous. A flicker of freedom. I parked the car. Didn't go inside. Just sat there, staring at the porch where we used to carve pumpkins. Where we took a photo every Halloween. Where she kissed me once, barefoot, holding a sparkler at midnight. Now, the light was gone. I didn't want to be here. Not tonight. I started the car again. I didn't know where I was going. But I knew I wouldn't be home. Not tonight. It started with a drink. Or at least that's what I told myself. It was Friday. The day Rachel had casually blocked out for whatever tryst she didn't care enough to hide anymore. I saw her calendar invite that morning. Wine tasting. 2 guests. Like she was planning a romantic evening with someone who wasn't her husband and was proud enough to put it in writing. I didn't say anything when she left the house. Didn't ask where she was going. Didn't ask what time she'd be home. She didn't offer that information either. She wore a dress I'd never seen. Burgundy. Tight. The kind she used to save for our anniversary. Her hair was styled to perfection, perfume trailing behind her as she breezed out the front door. I sat in the kitchen, nursing a beer that tasted like water, wondering how a woman could walk away from 17 years of marriage like she was heading to a brunch. At 6:12 p.m., my phone buzzed. Anna Tran, the project manager with the loud laugh and sharper wit, who always made meetings feel like happy hour. I assumed it was a work thing. Maybe she needed help on the Q4 planning document. But it wasn't. "Anna, drinks tonight? Just us. You look like you could use one." I stared at the message for a long moment. Just us. I didn't even think before typing back. Me? Where? We met at a quiet rooftop bar downtown. The kind that played chill music and had fire pits nestled between couches made for couples or co-workers pretending not to flirt. Anna was already there when I arrived, waving from a corner booth like she'd been waiting for me all her life. She wore a dark green top that clung to her in ways I hadn't noticed before, her legs crossed with the kind of casual confidence that always intimidated me just a little. "Look who finally showed up," she teased, sliding a whiskey across the table toward me. "I didn't order for you, but I made an educated guess." I took the glass. "You were right. I'm always right." She grinned, sipping her cocktail. We clinked glasses, and for a few minutes, we just sat there, watching the city lights flicker on as the sun dipped behind the skyline. It felt normal. Too normal. "You okay?" she asked eventually, tilting her head. I took a long sip before answering. "No." She didn't ask why, just nodded like she understood anyway. "That bad, huh?" "Worse." We talked for over an hour. Not about work. Not really. We talked about how exhausted we both were, about how deadlines never end, about stupid clients and even stupider project names. But somewhere in the middle of my second drink, things shifted. She leaned in. I don't remember what I said, but it made her laugh. Really laugh. Head thrown back. Eyes lit up in a way I hadn't seen in Rachel in years. And when she placed her hand on my forearm, just for a moment, I felt it. That spark. That flicker of something electric buried beneath months of numbness. "You've always been kind of mysterious. You know that?" she said, tracing the rim of her glass with one finger. "Mysterious?" "Yeah. The way you just exist at work. Reliable, smart, always calm. But there's something in your eyes. Like you're somewhere else." I smiled, even though it hurt. "Lately, I am." She didn't ask where. I think she already knew. We left just after 10. The air was cool and crisp, carrying the smell of rain on concrete. I walked her to her car. Neither of us spoke. The silence between us wasn't awkward. It was full. She turned before opening the door. "Thanks for coming out. Thanks for inviting me." She hesitated. "You deserve to feel seen. Whatever you're going through." I nodded, my throat tight. "Yeah, you too." And then she did it. She leaned in and kissed me. No build-up. No hesitation. Her lips met mine with a kind of deliberate softness that hit me harder than I expected. For a second, I didn't move. Then I kissed her back. It wasn't a long kiss. It didn't turn heated or messy. It was quick, simple, but real. The kind of kiss that tells you, "I see you." The kind you feel days later, even in your sleep. When she pulled back, we were both breathing harder than we should have been. "I'm sorry," she whispered, already stepping back. "Don't be," I said, and I meant it. I drove home in silence, hands gripping the wheel too tightly, heart racing for all the wrong reasons. I didn't feel guilty. Not really. Rachel had checked out weeks ago, months, if I was honest. And even if she hadn't asked for an open marriage, she'd abandoned me long before Anna ever touched my arm. But that night, lying in bed alone, I realized something else. I hadn't just kissed Anna because Rachel had betrayed me. I kissed Anna because I wanted to feel alive again. Because for the first time in ages, someone looked at me like I mattered. Someone leaned in, and I didn't flinch. Rachel didn't come home that night. I didn't bother asking why, and she didn't bother pretending. Her bra was in her overnight bag the next morning. A new one. Lacy, black, definitely not for sleeping. I poured my coffee like nothing happened. She didn't speak, didn't even glance at me. Just scrolled through her phone, fingers tapping, lips twitching at whatever conversation she'd slipped back into. We were roommates now, strangers who knew each other's worst secrets. But I had one now too. One kiss, one woman, and a door I didn't plan to close. I hadn't planned on saying yes. When Melissa from HR invited me to dinner the following Tuesday, it was more of a gentle nudge than a serious proposal. She said it the way someone says, "You look like you could use a good meal," but with a hint of something more. I was still riding the tail end of whatever had happened with Anna, if you could call it anything. A kiss. A moment. A small rebellion. Melissa's message came through our work messenger app around 3 p.m. "Melissa, I made way too much roasted chicken. Come by. No pressure." I stared at the message for 5 full minutes before responding. There wasn't an emoji. No exclamation marks. Just that cool, calm tone she always had. Like she already knew you were going to say yes. Me, what time? Her apartment was a 20-minute drive from the office, tucked into a quiet, tree-lined neighborhood that didn't quite match her corporate persona. Melissa was usually seen behind an open laptop, cardigan sleeves rolled to her elbows, reading policy documents with a squint that made her look perpetually annoyed, but in a charming way. When she opened the door, though, she looked different. She wore a flowy wine-red top and jeans, barefoot, hair down. She looked soft in a way I'd never seen before. "Glad you came," she said simply. I stepped inside. The place smelled like rosemary and lemon. Soft jazz played from a Bluetooth speaker near the kitchen, and the light from a single-floor lamp bathed the room in a warm amber hue. The dining table was set for 2, real plates, real napkins. A bottle of red breathing on the table. I hadn't eaten like that in weeks. "Hope you're hungry," she said. I overdid it. "Looks amazing," I said, and meant it. It didn't feel like a date. Not at first. We sat and talked like adults. Like coworkers. The wine helped. It warmed my chest, loosened my tongue. We talked about music, travel, the absurdity of office birthday cards. Then, somewhere between the second glass and dessert, peach cobbler still warm from the oven, she touched my hand across the table. Just lightly. Just enough. I looked at her. She looked back, and for the first time, I saw it. The loneliness behind her calm, the tension behind her smile. You're not the only one going through it. You know? She said, her voice soft. I nodded slowly. Your husband? She shook her head. Long gone. Just never made it official. But yeah, I've been where you are. The invisible phase, where you start to wonder if you're actually the one fading. Her fingers traced along mine. You're not. Something inside me cracked open. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. She stood and walked around the table, holding out her hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. Come here. I let her pull me up. She kissed me in the middle of her living room, slowly, carefully, like she was reading me. Her lips tasted faintly like wine and cinnamon, and when her hand moved behind my neck, I felt a familiar ache I'd buried for too long. When her tongue slipped into my mouth, I didn't resist. When her fingers curled into my shirt, I didn't stop her. Her couch was soft and deep, and her body melted into mine like we'd done this 100 times before. It didn't happen all at once. She took her time. We both did. She unbuttoned my shirt slowly, her nails grazing skin. Her top slid over her head and pulled at her feet. She wasn't wearing a bra. She climbed onto my lap, straddling me, and kissed me again, this time with less hesitation. My hands roamed without guilt. Her body welcomed me without shame. There was sex, but more than that, there was intimacy. It wasn't about lust. It was about need. And when I held her afterward, her head resting against my chest, her hand tracing lazy lines across my ribs, I didn't feel guilt. I felt human. I left just after midnight. She didn't ask me to stay, but when she walked me to the door, she kissed me again, gently, but with a promise tucked inside it. You're allowed to want more, she whispered, even if she doesn't. Rachel was asleep when I got home. I could hear her soft breathing from our bedroom, steady, unbothered. Her phone lit up on the nightstand with a message. I didn't check it. I didn't need to anymore. The balance had shifted. For the first time since she dropped the open marriage bomb, I wasn't the one left behind. I had a secret too now. But unlike hers, mine didn't come with smugness or cruelty. Mine came with warmth and touch and the smell of rosemary chicken that still lingered on my clothes. The next morning, I moved differently. Not cocky, not cold, just aware. Rachel noticed. You're up early, she said, tying her robe. I poured my coffee and smiled. Didn't sleep much. She didn't ask why. She didn't care. But she noticed. I saw the flicker in her eyes. That subtle shift. She wasn't used to being the one who didn't know something. And for the first time in a long, long time, I liked it that way. The office after hours was a different beast. Gone were the hums of copier machines, the clatter of keyboard storms, the shrill ping of calendar reminders. All that remained was the occasional tap of water from the ceiling pipes and the hum of dimmed fluorescence overhead, those sickly lights that turned everyone's skin just a little grayer. It was after 8 p.m., and I was still there. Not out of productivity, but avoidance. Home didn't feel like home anymore, and I wasn't in a rush to crawl back into the quiet where Rachel scrolled her phone in one room while I drowned in silence in another. That night, I wasn't alone. Sophie, our junior associate, was pacing the length of the conference room with a stack of color-coded reports in her hands, lips pursed as she mumbled numbers to herself. I don't think she knew I was watching her, at first. She had a nervous energy, like she was always one cup of coffee away from vibrating into another dimension. She wore oversized glasses that constantly slid down her nose, her hair pinned into a messy bun that somehow looked effortless and charming at the same time. I was at the long conference table, half reading through budget revisions, half thinking about Melissa's fingers on my skin 2 nights earlier. You okay over there? I asked, finally breaking the silence. She jumped, dropping one of the reports. Oh God. Yeah, just sorry. Didn't think anyone was still here. Neither did I. Sophie glanced around, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, then sat across from me, holding the file to her chest like a shield. This Q3 projection model is a mess, she said with a sigh. I've redone it twice, and it still looks like a toddler threw numbers at a wall. Want help? Her head snapped up. Really? You don't mind? I shrugged, not in a rush to be anywhere. She gave me a small smile. Same. We ended up working side by side for over an hour. At some point, she took off her blazer, revealing a simple black tank top beneath. Modest, but snug enough to make me notice the curve of her shoulders and the faint slope of her collarbone. She smelled faintly like vanilla and something warmer, cinnamon, maybe. I tried not to look too long. She leaned close as we reviewed the spreadsheet together, her finger tapping at a cell. You're not like the others, she said suddenly. I looked up. Others? The VPs. The managers. Most of them either bark at us or forget we exist. But you pay attention. Doesn't seem like a big deal. It is to us, she said, her voice quiet now. She looked at me differently then, less like a coworker and more like a woman trying to figure out if she was allowed to cross a line. You haven't seemed like yourself lately, she added. Everything okay? I hesitated. I could have lied. Should have lied. But the room was too quiet, and the words felt too heavy in my throat to hold back. My marriage, I said finally. It's complicated. Sophie didn't say anything, but she didn't look away either. She just nodded, eyes softening. And then she did something unexpected. She reached out and touched my hand, barely a brush, but the jolt that shot through me was undeniable. My eyes met hers. We didn't move for a long moment. Then she whispered, I shouldn't. But she leaned forward anyway. The kiss was tentative at first, almost like we were both testing the idea of it rather than committing to it. But when my hand moved to her hip and hers slid up my chest, hesitation gave way to hunger. Her lips were warm, slightly parted. She tasted like wine, though I hadn't seen her drink any. The kiss deepened, became clumsy in the way that first, unexpected kisses often are. But there was something undeniably electric about it. She pulled back suddenly, eyes wide, breath catching in her throat. I'm sorry, she whispered. I shook my head. Don't be. Her fingers grazed my jaw, her gaze searching. You just looked like you needed someone to remind you you still matter. My chest tightened. So many words I wanted to say. So many things I didn't know how to admit. Instead, I said, you reminded me. She stood, smoothing her skirt, collecting the scattered reports she'd dropped during our moment of madness. I should go, she said, not quite looking at me. Yeah. She walked to the door, hesitated, then turned back. If you ever want to talk, or not talk, I'm around. I nodded, and then she was gone. I didn't go home right away. I sat in that empty conference room, the taste of Sophie still lingering on my lips, and tried to understand what was happening to me. A month ago, I was a husband, steady, loyal, reliable. Now, I was someone else entirely. Someone who had kissed 3 women in less than 3 weeks. Someone who had begun to find solace in the arms of strangers because the one person who was supposed to know me best had already forgotten who I was. And yet, I didn't feel guilty. Not like I expected to. Instead, I felt wanted, desired, alive. When I finally walked into the house, the lights were off except for the dim glow of Rachel's phone screen lighting up her face as she lay on the couch. Late night? She asked, not looking up. Something like that. She yawned. I'm going to bed. She didn't ask where I'd been. She didn't ask why my shirt smelled faintly like vanilla. And I didn't offer. There was nothing left to explain anymore. There's something about office parking garages after dark that makes you feel like you're doing something wrong, even if you're just walking to your car. Maybe it's the echo of your footsteps, the way the overhead lights flicker, the strange hush in the air that swallows sound. I wasn't in a rush to go home. I hadn't been for weeks. Rachel and I had devolved into cold cohabitants. We passed each other in the hallway like strangers in an airport, just enough acknowledgement to not be rude, but nothing more. I'd left my jacket in the car that morning. I was reaching for the door handle when I heard heels tapping behind me. Leaving without saying goodnight, a voice called. I turned and found Vanessa, senior manager of finance, 40s, sharp suits, sharper eyes. She walked like someone who knew the exact effect she had on a room. And tonight, the effect was no different. Didn't realize we were on a first-name basis for goodbyes, I said. She smirked, stopping a few feet away. You've been brooding in corners for 2 weeks. I figured it was time I reminded you that you're not invisible. I chuckled. Guess I haven't been doing a great job hiding it. No, you look like someone who's lost something important and doesn't know if he wants to find it again. I leaned against the car, exhaling. That obvious? She stepped closer, crossing her arms. You're not the only one who's been there. I raised an eyebrow. Oh. Vanessa tilted her head slightly, her expression softening. Divorced. 3 years ago. He said I was too much, too focused, too driven, too intense. His loss. That made her smile, but it was a tired one. By the time I realized he'd been cheating, I didn't even care. It was already over. I nodded slowly. That's the worst part. When the betrayal doesn't hurt anymore, because the person stopped being yours a long time ago. She stepped even closer, close enough that I could smell her perfume, musky and bold, something that lingered even after she was gone. Her gaze locked onto mine. Have you told her? She asked. Rachel? I asked, stiffening. She nodded. No. She wouldn't care. Vanessa studied me. Then why are you still trying to pretend you do? I didn't have an answer for that. Her hand reached out, gently brushing the side of my arm. That single touch, the confidence in it, the maturity, the heat, hit me harder than I expected. I've watched you, she said. In meetings. At lunch. You carry weight like it's your responsibility to hold up the ceiling. I used to think it was. Vanessa moved in, her voice barely above a whisper. Let it fall. Before I could reply, she kissed me. Hard. Deliberate. Nothing like Sophie's hesitance or Melissa's warmth. This was a woman who didn't ask for permission, who knew what she wanted and took it. Her hands gripped the lapels of my blazer as her mouth found mine, and I felt myself surrender without even thinking. My arms wrapped around her waist, fingers grazing the curve of her lower back. There was nothing gentle about it. It was need, sharp and sudden and unapologetic. The parking garage around us vanished. The only thing real was her mouth on mine, her breath in my ear, the sound of her low, satisfied hum as I kissed her deeper. When we finally broke apart, both of us were breathing hard. Wow, I muttered. She smiled and stepped back, adjusting her blouse casually. Sometimes you just need to feel it, don't you? That someone still wants you. I nodded, throat tight. Yeah. Vanessa turned toward her car, heels clicking again. I don't do second guesses, she said over her shoulder. So if you regret it, don't tell me. I watched her drive off, taillights vanishing into the dark. I didn't regret it. Not for a second. The adrenaline didn't wear off until I was halfway home. I pulled into a gas station, palms still tingling. I stood outside my car under the hum of flickering lights, staring at my own reflection in the window. This wasn't the man I used to be, but maybe that wasn't a bad thing. The man I used to be swallowed disappointment with a smile. He made himself small. He waited patiently for love to return. Now I was someone else. Someone who no longer waited for permission to feel wanted. Rachel was asleep again when I got in. She hadn't waited up. I saw her phone screen glow on the nightstand. She smiled in her sleep, faintly, dreamily, probably texting him before she passed out. I sat on the edge of the bed, looking at her. There was a time I would have run my fingers through her hair. There was a time I would have curled around her in the dark. Now, I didn't feel anything, not even hate, just space, cold, expansive space, and a lingering memory of Vanessa's lips on mine. The next morning, Rachel was in the kitchen, hair still wet, wearing her old college sweatshirt like we were 20 again. Morning, she mumbled, buttering toast. I poured coffee. Morning. She glanced up at me, hesitating. You're in a good mood. I raised an eyebrow. Is that a problem? She laughed under her breath. No, just rare. I smiled. Not forced. Not plastic. Real. Because in that moment, I realized something she hadn't figured out yet. She thought I was still waiting. Still mourning. Still holding the door open while she ran wild. She had no idea I'd already walked through my own. It was strange how quickly the excitement turned into dread. The quarterly company party should have been an excuse to let off steam, food, drinks, small talk with people who pretended not to hate each other the rest of the year. But as I buttoned my dress shirt in front of the mirror, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was going to come crashing down. There were too many secrets now. Anna, Melissa, Sophie, Vanessa, they all worked in the same building. They all knew me in ways no one else did. They all had pieces of me, and tonight, they'd all be under the same roof. The venue was a high-rise bar overlooking the city. Floor-to-ceiling windows. A hired DJ. An open bar. Corporate was trying too hard to make us feel appreciated, and everyone knew it, but nobody turned down free drinks. I arrived fashionably late, hoping to slip in unnoticed. No such luck. Anna found me within 10 minutes, gliding over in a navy blue dress that hugged her figure like a tailored promise. Hey, stranger, she said, voice low and teasing. You've been hiding. Busy week, I offered. She smiled, too smart to believe it. You look good. Conflicted, but good. Before I could respond, Melissa appeared at my other side, holding 2 glasses of red wine. She handed me one without asking. Needed backup, she said with a wink. Office politics out there are more dangerous than HR complaints. Anna glanced at her, and there was a flicker of something. Something territorial. Something knowing. And just like that, the air tightened. Sophie showed up next, bouncing slightly on her heels, cheeks flushed from either wine or nerves. "Oh, you're here," she said, smiling like we were just co-workers. Just friends. Her eyes darted to Melissa, then Anna, and I saw it. Realization. She felt it too. The web was tightening. I managed to smile, said something forgettable, and made a quick excuse to step away, disappearing toward the balcony for a breath of air that didn't reek of potential implosions. Outside, the city sprawled beneath me, hundreds of lives buzzing beneath neon signs and taxi horns. I leaned against the railing, gripping my drink tighter than I should have. "You look like you're about to jump," a voice said beside me. Claire. Of course. She wasn't dressed to impress. She didn't need to be. A simple black dress, hair pinned up, silver earrings catching the city light. She looked elegant without trying. I exhaled, letting some of the tension melt. Didn't realize how claustrophobic that room would feel. She joined me at the railing. "Let me guess, 3 women in that room have seen you naked?" I froze. She turned to me, raising an eyebrow. 4. I stared at her. "You knew?" Claire took a sip from her glass. "I noticed things." My heart beat louder in my ears. "You judging me?" She looked at me carefully. "No, but I am wondering when you're going to stop pretending any of it is helping." That hit harder than I expected. "I didn't go looking for it," I said. She nodded. "Maybe not, but you let it find you." I didn't know what else to do. "After Rachel." "I'm not Rachel," she cut in gently. "And you're not the man you were a month ago." I looked away, swallowing the lump in my throat. "I feel like I've been unraveling," I admitted. Claire leaned her elbow on the rail. "That's because you keep patching the hole with sex and flattery. It holds for a while, then it tears again." I stayed quiet. She turned to face me fully. "You deserve more than being someone's reaction." I met her eyes. "Why do you care?" "Because you were the only person in that building who treated me like I mattered. Not just another analyst. Not just another body." I didn't know what to say. She'd always been honest. Even now, her words cut, but they didn't wound. They clarified. "Then why haven't you crossed the line?" I asked. Claire smiled, soft and sad. "Because if I ever did, I wouldn't want it to be background noise." That silenced me. She reached out, touched my arm. "I'm not here to fix you, but I won't be part of what breaks you further." Then she turned and walked back inside, her silhouette framed by the city lights. I stayed outside for a while, alone, letting her words sink into the cracks. She didn't pity me. She didn't flirt. She didn't seduce. She saw me, and for the first time in weeks, I saw myself clearly. I wasn't building something. I was running. From Rachel. From pain. From everything I didn't want to admit. And Claire was the first person who hadn't asked for anything, but gave me something anyway. Truth. When I finally returned inside, the party was louder. Anna laughed too hard near the bar. Melissa was deep in conversation with someone from procurement, casting occasional glances my way. Sophie stood by the DJ booth, fiddling with her bracelet, biting her lip. And Vanessa? She wasn't even pretending. She was across the room, sitting confidently on a leather bench, legs crossed, eyes locked on mine as she sipped from a glass of bourbon like it was blood. My chest tightened. I excused myself again. Too many glances. Too many implications. The walls were closing in. But somewhere in that pressure, something shifted. Something solidified. I didn't want any more of this. I didn't want to juggle women like masks. I didn't want to patch my wounds with skin. I wanted something real. Someone who didn't look at me like a conquest. Someone who said, "You're allowed to want more." Someone like Claire. It was a Wednesday night when Brooke cornered me. The office was half empty, as usual, with only the overachievers and the quietly broken hanging around past 7. I was somewhere between both at this point, too proud to go home, too restless to stay. She found me in the break room, staring into a vending machine like it had the answers to all my problems. "Don't tell me you're actually debating those powdered donuts," she said, her voice unmistakable. I turned, smirking. "You caught me." Brooke crossed her arms, leaning against the doorway. "I figured you'd have better taste." She always talked like that, quick, playful, with a bite. We'd sparred in meetings for years, trading jabs over performance metrics and client poaching with an ease that always felt fun, like foreplay disguised as professionalism. Tonight, though, something felt different. She wasn't wearing her usual power suit. Instead, she had on a dark sweater and black slacks, simple, elegant, and oddly intimate. Her makeup was lighter, her eyes sharper. "You okay?" she asked, more seriously now. "You've been off." I hesitated. "I've been figuring some things out." She stepped closer. "Like why your wife keeps texting other men at midnight." I blinked. "You knew?" Brooke shrugged. "Everyone knows. She hasn't exactly been discreet. But don't worry, office gossip hasn't gotten too cruel." I laughed bitterly. "Yet." She stepped fully into the room, letting the door close behind her. "You know what I never understood?" she said. "How a woman could cheat on a man like you." I raised an eyebrow. "Like me?" "Yeah." Her voice was lower now. Smart. Calm. Quiet confidence. "You're the only man here who actually listens when someone else talks. You don't fake respect, you give it." I wasn't sure how to respond. So I didn't. She stepped even closer. I've always admired that. More than I let on. Our eyes locked, and just like that, the space between us changed. She wasn't teasing anymore. There was tension now, thick, magnetic, undeniable. I took a step forward. "Why now?" Her voice dropped. "Because I'm tired of pretending I don't see you." And then her hands were in my hair, her mouth pressed to mine, and it wasn't gentle. Brooke kissed like she argued. Relentless, passionate, razor-sharp. Her body pressed into mine as I backed her against the counter, and the heat between us sparked into full flame. There was no hesitation, no slow build-up. It was fire meeting gasoline. She tugged at my shirt as I kissed down her neck, her breath catching against my ear. "This is stupid," she whispered. "Yeah," I muttered, kissing her again. "Very." We didn't stop. Not until her blazer was on the floor, and my hands were under her sweater, tracing the edge of lace. Her nails dug into my back. My lips found the soft, sensitive spot just beneath her jaw, and she gasped. For a moment, the only sound in the room was breathing. Heavy, needy, real. Then she pulled back, eyes wide. "If we keep going, we won't stop." I nodded, heart pounding. "I know." She stepped away, smoothing her sweater, straightening herself with practiced ease. "We can't do this here," she said. "But we wanted to." She met my eyes. "That's the problem. We didn't sleep together that night. But it was closer than any of the others. More urgent, more dangerous, and for some reason emptier." I drove home with the windows down, trying to air out the scent of her perfume clinging to my shirt. I didn't want Rachel to notice. Not that she would. She didn't ask where I'd been anymore. She didn't even fake curiosity. We were two satellites now, orbiting each other without ever touching. I sat in the driveway for a long time before going inside. Inside, the lights were on. Rachel was on the couch, laughing at something on her phone. When I walked in, she barely looked up. "Hey," she said. "Hey." That was it. Nothing about the hour. Nothing about where I'd been or what I smelled like. She didn't care. And the part that used to ache from that realization, it didn't hurt anymore. It just felt numb. The next morning, Brooke passed me in the hallway at work. Her eyes flicked to mine, a subtle glance. Her expression unreadable. No words. No smirk. No flirtation. Just silence. The kind that carries weight. The kind that means, we crossed something, and we can't undo it. I sat at my desk and tried to work. Tried to drown myself in tasks, meetings, calendars, deliverables. But I couldn't focus. Not on Brooke. Not on Rachel. Not even on the guilt. All I could think about was what Claire had said. "You're using yourself up." She'd seen it. Long before I had. And now, standing in the wreckage of 5 near affairs, I realized something sickening. She was right. None of it fixed me. Not Anna's charm. Not Melissa's warmth. Not Sophie's sympathy. Not Vanessa's fire. And not even Brooke's intensity. I'd been chasing validation like oxygen. Reaching, gasping, needing to feel something again. But all it did was hollow me out further. I wasn't building a new life. I was hiding from the ruins of the old one. That night, I didn't go anywhere. No drinks. No texts. No kisses. I sat alone, on the back porch, drinking a beer that had long since gone warm, watching the sky turn black. And for the first time, I didn't feel like escaping. I just felt tired. Not physically. Emotionally. Spiritually. Exhausted in a way sleep couldn't touch. And through the haze of everything, every kiss, every lie, every silence, I kept hearing one voice. Claire's. "You're allowed to want more." And I finally believed her. You can only juggle so many masks before one slips. And when it does, the others usually come crashing down with it. By the following Monday, the weight of everything I'd done had started to seep into the walls of the office. Nothing had been said out loud, but the atmosphere had changed. Anna was colder. Melissa, distracted. Sophie wouldn't meet my eyes in meetings anymore. Vanessa still smirked when we passed in the hall, but it wasn't flirtation anymore. It was acknowledgement, a nod from one sinner to another. And Brooke? She avoided me entirely. The rush of it, the seduction, the attention, the heat, had burned off. And in its place was a quiet, looming exhaustion. The kind that hums beneath your skin. The kind that makes you feel like you're walking through a fog, even when the sun is shining. It was thrilling once. But now I was just tired of keeping the lies straight. Rumors started in small ways. I overheard 2 junior analysts whispering in the break room. He's with someone. Heard it's Melissa. No way. I saw him leaving with Anna last week. And then the clincher. Vanessa touched his arm in that budget review like she owned him. I slipped out before they noticed me. But my heart pounded. Not with fear. Not even shame. Just inevitability. This couldn't last. And I knew it. It was all a house of cards built on the fantasy that being wanted by many could substitute for being loved by one. Spoiler, it couldn't. At lunch, I sat alone in the courtyard, hoping for silence. Instead, I got Claire. She walked out with a paper bag in one hand and a thermos in the other. No greeting. No clever jab. She just sat down across from me and began unwrapping a sandwich. Turkey and Swiss. I asked, breaking the quiet. Nope. Chicken pesto. I nodded, smiling slightly. Classy. She shrugged. Someone's got to have standards around here. We ate in silence for a few minutes, until she glanced up and asked, So how's your soul? I nearly choked on my bite. She didn't laugh. Just watched me. Falling apart, I admitted. But still intact, somehow. Claire nodded slowly. You look different. Older. More real. I exhaled. I don't know who I am anymore. I've become someone I never thought I'd be. Lying. Hiding. Sneaking around. You're not hiding, she said gently. You're waking up. To what? Claire leaned forward. To the fact that sex isn't the same as connection. That being seen isn't the same as being valued. And that revenge doesn't heal anything. I stared at her. She always had a way of cutting right to the truth. I wanted to hurt Rachel, I said, even if I didn't admit it to myself. Did it work? No. I looked at my hands. I slept with, or almost slept with, 5 women in the last month. And not one of them made me feel whole. They made me feel wanted. But that faded. Every time. Claire reached across the table, laid her hand gently over mine. Because it's not about being wanted, she said. It's about being known. The words sank deep. So deep I almost didn't hear the side door open behind us. Anna walked out, followed by Brooke, both mid-laugh, both pausing when they saw us. Claire didn't flinch. She just smiled at them, then looked back at me. They'll talk, I murmured. Let them, she said, her hand still over mine. I felt something shift in that moment. A click. A clarity. I was done with the games. Done with the spiral. It was time to stop surviving and start choosing. Back at my desk, I opened a blank document. Not a report. Not a spreadsheet. Just a simple message. To Rachel. Subject, something you should know. I'm not angry anymore. Just empty. And I think we both deserve more than this silence we've been pretending is normal. I don't blame you for wanting something else. I just wish you'd said it before you walked away in spirit. I've made mistakes. I've been with other people. I'm not proud of it, but I won't lie about it either. I think we both know this marriage is over. Let's stop pretending. I didn't sign it with bitterness. Just my name. And then I hit send. Just like that. No drama. No explosion. Just the truth. That night, I didn't go to Anna's. Or Melissa's. Or anywhere else I might have gone before. I went home. Rachel was on the couch, barefoot, wine glass in hand, phone glowing in her lap. When she saw me, her eyes narrowed. You sent an email, she said flatly. I did. She stared for a long moment. You've been with someone. I met her gaze. Several someones. She blinked. Once. You really think you're the victim here? No, I said softly. I think we both are. Rachel looked down at her wine, then back at me. You stopped trying long before I did, she whispered. I did, I admitted. So now what? I sat in the chair across from her. Calm. Steady. Now we stop hurting each other. She swallowed hard, setting the glass down. You're serious. Yeah. For the first time in a long time, there was nothing left to say. And that silence felt right. Later that night, alone in the guest room I'd unofficially moved into weeks ago, I thought about Claire. Her eyes, her hand on mine, her refusal to let me waste myself. And I realized something. The others had made me feel needed, but she made me feel seen. She was already sipping wine when I walked through the front door. The clink of glass against her teeth was the first thing I heard, followed by the flick of her fingernail tapping her phone. She didn't even look up, just scrolled, legs tucked under her on the couch, like she was starring in some domestic drama about a misunderstood woman in a dying marriage. Hey, I said casually, tossing my keys on the entry table. Rachel looked up, barely, and then back at her screen. I was already tired. We'd been dancing around this for weeks. Little barbs, passive-aggressive silences, nights spent in separate rooms, all of it leading up to something inevitable. Tonight, it finally happened. You know, she said, swirling her wine. Derek invited me to this art exhibit downtown. Some kind of pop-up thing with live music. Pretty exclusive. I raised an eyebrow. Derek, that the guy with the man bun and kombucha addiction? She smirked. He's cultured. Sure, that's what we're calling it now. She set the wine down and stood slowly, crossing her arms over her chest. Why do you even care? You made it clear you checked out a long time ago. No, I said, stepping into the living room. You checked out. I just stopped chasing you when I realized you weren't coming back. She rolled her eyes. Oh, please, don't make this about me. I told you what I wanted. I was honest. You were conveniently honest. Right after you lined up someone else. Her jaw tightened. So what? You wanted me to lie? No, Rachel. I wanted you to fight. For me. For us. But you didn't. You asked for an open marriage like you were asking what movie we should stream. I was trying to be progressive, she snapped. No, you were trying to give yourself permission to cheat without guilt. That's not progress. That's cowardice. She grabbed her wine and threw back the rest of it in one long gulp. Then she walked toward me, eyes blazing. And what about you? She said, jabbing her finger into my chest. You think I don't notice how you've changed? How you come home late, smelling like different perfume every night. I didn't flinch. You noticed, but you didn't ask. Because I didn't care, she shouted. There it was. The truth. Naked. Loud. Echoing in the quiet room. And for the first time, it didn't sting. I just nodded. That's the difference, I said calmly. You didn't care, and I finally stopped pretending it bothered me. She stared at me, angry, defensive, but something in her expression shifted. Maybe it was the realization that the leash she thought I'd been tethered to had quietly snapped. You really think you're some kind of saint? She whispered. No, I think I'm finally done playing the fool. She turned away, pacing toward the kitchen, then spun back. So what? You've been screwing around to get even. I met her eyes. No, I've been with other women because I needed to remember I was still alive, that I still mattered to someone. Her face paled just slightly. She wasn't expecting that. Not from me. She always thought I was the safe one. The doormat. The quiet guy who'd endure her emotional affairs and yoga instructors with wandering hands without ever pushing back. I don't believe you, she said. I laughed softly. You don't have to. But let me make one thing clear. I stepped forward. You're not the only one who can be wanted. Her mouth parted, the tiniest breath escaping. A flicker of doubt lit behind her eyes. For the first time in years, she was seeing me not as the man who waited, but as the man who walked away. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't shout. I didn't need to. I was calm, and that terrified her. She folded her arms, holding herself like she needed armor. So who was it, she asked. Anna? Melissa? Don't tell me Sophie from Strategy fell for your sad puppy routine. I didn't answer. She stepped closer. You don't want to tell me because you know I'll win. I always do. That made me smile, because she didn't get it. You already lost, Rachel, I said softly. You lost the minute you looked at me and saw boredom instead of loyalty. You lost the moment you called sleeping with someone else a relationship strategy. You lost when you stopped being curious about me. Her face flushed red. You're so full of yourself. No, I'm just done being full of you. We stood there, just staring, the silence louder than the argument had been. She blinked first. Where does this leave us? She asked, voice trembling. It leaves us done. She looked like she wanted to slap me. Or cry. Maybe both. But instead, she just nodded once and walked away. Up the stairs, feet heavy, leaving behind only the faint clink of the wine glass on the coffee table. I sat down, slowly, in the chair across from where she'd been. My chest rose and fell, a strange lightness settling in. I'd said it. I'd finally said it. Not for revenge, not to win, but to end something that had long since died. And the absence of her voice felt like peace. Later that night, I lay in bed, not in the guest room, not out of spite, just because I could. Rachel didn't come in. She didn't knock. She didn't text. She knew it was over, even if we hadn't filed anything yet. The power she thought she had over me was gone. She thought I'd crumble. She thought I'd beg. She thought I was still that man sitting at the dinner table weeks ago, reeling from her open marriage bombshell. She hadn't seen what had been growing in me since. Strength, clarity, and the memory of someone who looked me in the eye and said, "You're worth more." Tomorrow, I'd see Claire. I didn't know what I'd say yet, but I knew one thing. It wouldn't be a confession. It would be a choice. I didn't sleep much the night after Rachel and I had our final conversation. But it wasn't restlessness this time. It wasn't dread or guilt or the kind of internal screaming that had kept me up in weeks past. It was clarity. A strange calm had settled over me, like the eye of a long, brutal storm. For the first time in months, maybe years, I didn't wake up with that aching sense that something in my life was missing, because now I knew exactly what it was, and what I wasn't willing to chase anymore. Claire was already in the office when I arrived. She always came in early, another reason I admired her. Not for the hours, but for the stillness. She carved out space for herself before the chaos of the day began. She didn't rush. She didn't need attention. She just was, steadfast, present, quietly strong. I found her in the break room, stirring cream into her coffee with one hand while scanning a report with the other. She glanced up when I stepped inside. Her eyes held mine a little longer than usual. "Morning," she said. "Morning." A pause. Then, "You look lighter." "I feel it." She turned fully toward me. "Something changed." "Everything," I said. "And nothing, all at once." Claire arched a brow but didn't press. She waited, the way she always did, letting me choose the depth of my own honesty. I took a breath. And then I said the words I'd been building toward since the day she first looked at me like I mattered. "Would you take a walk with me?" It was still early enough that the city hadn't fully awakened. The streets around the office were mostly empty. Cool air brushed against our faces, and the sky was painted with that soft, bluish-gray hue of a morning trying to make up its mind. We walked without speaking for a block. Then another. I was the one who broke the silence. "I need to tell you something. All of it." Claire didn't flinch. "Okay." So I told her. Everything. Anna's flirtation and that first kiss outside the bar. Melissa's warmth over dinner, and the night that followed on her couch. Sophie's quiet concern and the stolen kiss under the soft glow of a projector. Vanessa's boldness in the parking garage, the heat of her body pressed against mine. Brooke's intensity, her hands pulling me in like she'd waited years for the chance. I told her not because I was proud, but because she deserved to hear the whole truth from me. When I finished, she was quiet. We stopped walking. Claire looked out across the street, watching a bus rattle past, then turned to face me fully. "That's a hell of a mess," she said. I let out a breath. "Yeah, but you're here now." I nodded. "Because none of them made me feel like you did." Her eyes searched mine. "And how did I make you feel?" "Like I mattered," I said. "Not because I was useful or broken or exciting, but because you saw me when I couldn't even look at myself." Claire didn't look away. She stepped a little closer. "I didn't fix you," she said. "I know," I replied. "You reminded me I could fix myself." She studied me for a moment longer, then reached up and brushed her fingers along the side of my face. Barely a touch, but enough to make my heart slow. "I need to know you're not just picking me because you ran out of other options," she said softly. "I'm picking you," I said, "because you were the only one who didn't ask for anything in return. You didn't need me to be desirable. You just needed me to be real." Claire's lips curved into the faintest smile. She stepped forward, and without another word, she slipped her hand into mine. We kept walking, side by side. No destination, just forward. Back at the office, everything felt quieter. The noise of the past weeks, the glances, the tension, the secrets, had started to fade. Anna saw me pass in the hall and gave me a small, neutral nod. Not cold, not warm, just closure. Melissa didn't avoid me. She smiled, kind but distant, like someone who'd finally let go of a daydream. Sophie passed me in the stairwell. She didn't say anything, but she looked relieved. Vanessa met my eyes in the elevator, one eyebrow raised. "You look peaceful," she said. "I am." She smiled. "Took you long enough." "And Brooke?" She left a sticky note on my desk that afternoon. "For what it's worth, I never wanted to break you. I just wanted to know if you were real." I kept the note, but I didn't reply, because I didn't need to explain anything anymore. That night, I went home and packed a bag. Rachel was in the kitchen when I came down the stairs. She didn't ask where I was going, just watched me with that same tired smile she used to wear when we both knew things were falling apart. "I'm not angry anymore," I said. "I know," she replied. I paused at the door. "I hope you find what you're looking for." She nodded. "You too." And that was it. No fight, no tears, no parting shots. Just two people finally admitting it was over. Claire met me at the park just after sunset. We sat on the grass, the city lights flickering in the distance, our shoulders touching. "I don't want to rush this," I told her. "Good," she said, "because I'm not in a rush either." We stayed there long after the light had faded. No labels, no promises, just presence, just peace, and the beginning of something real. Not a rebound, not a reaction, but a choice.